Good afternoon and welcome to Journey Out Facebook Live. I'm Dr. Stephanie Powell. I'm the Executive Director of Journey Out. And today we're going to have a guest who you are going to see in just a moment by the name of Stephanie Jones, who is going to, she's a survivor of human sex trafficking. So she's going to tell a little bit about her story. Oftentimes when I am presenting survivors, although their story is important because it kind of sets the context, but it really is who they were in the past. So only to set context, because what's really important is what are they doing now? So where did they come from? What basically has happened to them? What are they doing now? What do they see in the future? And if they are survivor leaders, what are they doing to help others? So that's what we're going to actually do with Stephanie Jones. She's a group facilitator here at Journey Out. So we are going to be talking to her in just a moment. Because, and I said this before, whenever we do this and we're talking about human sex trafficking, it's a pretty heavy subject. So I try and start it off and end it with lighter notes. So last week we talked about the murdering hornets, right, that were going after the bumblebees. So today I'm going to talk about me for just one moment. So we're on the stay-at-home order, right? And so, there's talk about extending some form of the stay at home for the next 3 months. So if you're in the Los Angeles area, just like me, how are you? You're going to see Stephanie in a minute. Okay, I'm sorry, I digress. Listen, so when I heard the 3 months, I was like you guys, if you're from LA, going like, what? But they said it's going to be some form of it. So I guess it's going to start to relax. But here's my point. So when I was getting dressed this morning, I was looking at my hair, right? And I have dreadlocks. And it was time to get it done when we went on lock, just saying. So I'm looking at my hair and I'm looking at the top of it, and it's growing out. And I'm saying to myself this morning, if this continues, I'm going to literally be able to brush my hair at the top and do a comb over. I might be able to put it in a ponytail. I don't know. So my sisters that are watching me right now, you know what I'm talking about. So that's how I wanted to start off today, because I thought about that. So you can hear Stephanie laughing in the background. You know why? Because she could see it for real, for real. So I'm going to bring Stephanie Jones up now because, we're not like Channel 7 or something like that. This is kind of an amateur type of thing. We're trying to figure out what is the best way to do this so that it makes sense. So the way that we're going to do this, we're going to do it in an interview type of form. And I think that might be the best way to do it. So she's going to sit down here and I'm going to sit where she is and I'm going to ask her questions. So just to give you an idea of today's Facebook Live, we're going to first talk with Stephanie Jones. And then after that, I'm going to talk to you about some things that are going on nationwide, of course, as well as Los Angeles. So as it pertains to the exploitation and recruitment of children during COVID-19, because as you know, there are several kids who are now working online because of school. Our parents are out working and may not be paying very close attention to what they're doing online, and not to mention the fact that children are used to socializing online. So what that does is it opens it up to certain risks. Now, I'm not saying don't let your kids touch the computer. I'm not saying that at all. But I just want to make you aware of some of the ways that predators are using this virus as an opportunity to contact kids. And what organizations are doing, organizations such as INCOSI, who are working with online places such as TikTok and Google and places like that. So we're going to talk about that at the end. And then I'm also going to kind of give you kind of a thumbnail sketch of what's happening in terms of crime in general nationwide during this COVID epidemic. So we are going to now start with Stephanie Jones. So I'm going to have her sit here, and I'm going to go on the other side. Her hair looks great. She's not having the issues that I'm having. So Stephanie, if you would come and have a seat here, and I will ask you questions.
Okay, lovely.
So tell everybody hi.
Hi everyone, how is everybody? Hi de jour. Oh, I could totally use some chair yoga right around now.
Oh, you know what? We'll add du jour and talk about what it is that she does in the South Central location. So du jour, can you put a thumbs up and let me know if you can hear me?
De jour, are you still there? Can you hear us? Yes.
She hears me.
Hello,
Okay.
family.
I
Yes.
just want to make sure you didn't go to the bathroom or you just, have it playing and not listening to us. So this is Stephanie Jones that I'm introducing you to. She is a survivor, leader, advocate in the fight to help victims of human trafficking. She has been with us for, I would say, close to what?
3 years.
To 3 years now. And she has been fabulous. Not only does she work with us, but she's also become a friend, and I just love her to death. So, Stephanie, if you could just tell everyone a little bit about your story and your past, so we're going to start with that. And I just want you to know, Journey Out Family, that little dog she's got, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's going to become mine once we're finished with this. Okay, whatever. Okay, so Stephanie, can you just tell us, give us a little bit about your background and how you became a victim of human trafficking?
Yeah. So I come from a very small town in Texas. One of those everybody, if you get in trouble in one place, you get your butt spanked 3 times before you get home for the real butt whooping, that kind of upbringing. That's kind of where I grew up at. And I didn't necessarily come from a model background, like it wasn't mom and dad, working family kind of experience. My dad was incarcerated when I was very, very young, and my mother left a picture when I was very, very young. And I kind of just bounced around a little bit, and I was exposed to various forms of childhood sexual abuse. And that kind of done some things emotionally, and the lack of parental exposure left me seeking some type of guidance or attention. I just wanted connection with somebody, and I wanted somebody to love me, we will say. And so at a very young age, I became promiscuous, and that promiscuity led to a teenage pregnancy. And that teenage pregnancy has become the greatest gift of my life. However, when I brought her home, the paternal influence in my life at the time kind of gave me his best advice, which was, now that you're a young lady and you have a child, you should never come home with anything except a wet hoo-ha. And introduced me, my first introduction was to a man that lived down the street from us. His name was Mr. Charles, and he was a retired postmaster. And just for, like, not specifically him, but like just generally, But it was very, go to dinner and spend some time, and he's going to make sure that he takes care of you. And that was my first encounter, and it was about maybe 30 minutes for dinner and 15 additional minutes and about $200. And at the time I was about 15 years old, and it was kind of like, wow, that was a great way to make $200. But, it was kind of like, well, I'm doing it anyway, so there's some money involved in, one person told one person, and they told the next person, and the next person told the next person. And without even knowing what was going on, I found myself being passed from person to person to person and having these experiences. So by the time I was of age, I had probably been in the life for about 3 years, and didn't even really know that I was in the life.
Okay, so this started in terms of being in the life, started at 15, and who was that told you that you need to go out here and make money?
It was my grandfather.
Okay,
who was the person that gave me that information.
So your grandfather, if you made $200, did he get any portion of the $200?
Well, yeah, it wasn't the typical, I think what people think of when they think pimp prostitute relationship. It wasn't like, go make $200 and bring me back 80%, you know what I mean? It was just like I had to contribute to, the household. So, maybe if I made $200 today, I would give like 100 or 150 because, rent and bills and groceries and expenses and life. And
so he benefited from it.
He did benefit from
it. And so, so now you're of age, and although you don't have to get into the weeds, but it's the assumption that your life kind of took off from there, being in the life. Is that the right assumption?
My life took off from there, being in the life, and it was many forms of the life. So it wasn't just known prostitution. I have been engaged in exotic dancing, and some print work, and some video work, and other forms of what we coin as the life.
Okay, so it's not only the pimp-driven aspect of it, but what you just described when you talk about print, and other aspects of it, exotic dancing. That's what we would probably coin as exploitation.
Yeah.
So it's human trafficking and exploitation. How would you, based on your past and your experience, why was it important to you to advocate and help others that had a past similar to yours?
So when I came up from air after 15, 20 years in the life, I had been impacted by drug addiction and alcoholism, and all of those things had impacted my family and my children. And when I began looking for help and a way out, there were treatment centers available, there were mental health facilities available, but there weren't people that were looking at what sex work does to a person. And I was fortunate to be introduced over a holiday to the executive director of another organization called Chosen Gospel Recovery. And she became my mentor and kind of step by step me to becoming a woman, becoming a young lady. Like I had a full grown body, but I didn't have that mentally, and step by step into that. And a lot of the work that she was able to do with me was looking at my experiences. And it became important to me that I communicate with other young women like myself that got to a place where, as adults, I felt like I don't have any skills. Nobody's gonna like, the best thing I had going for me was the bedroom and the kitchen. And between those two things, like if I couldn't make it happen, it wasn't gonna happen. And I really believed that. And there wasn't a lot of people that were invested in helping me understand anything different. And I see it a lot still today. Women that come in that are grown numerically, but have no idea how to find their goals and what they want. And somebody done that for me. And it was important to me to be able to do that for other women and help them understand that my value is not how much money I charged. My value is not the things that I have done or those skills that I have acquired, but I have value and worth beyond that, and I just have to rediscover it.
And so, how did you find out about Journey Out? How did you get here?
So I actually found out about Journey Out when I started working on my own nonprofit. WOW was a big passion for me, but I didn't have a lot of information about the actual statistics or the science or the political parts of human trafficking and what it looked like and what I needed to have. So in a part of that journey, I actually reached out to Journey Out to become a volunteer and just do advocacy work and come in and support and share my story. And after some back and forth conversation, Journey Out realized I was not just some strange person and gave me a call and called me in for an interview. And we began some back and forth dialogue. And that is how I discovered Journey Out. Journey Out just kind of was a part of when I thought of human trafficking, and when I looked it up, Journey Out was the first thing that came up, and that was what pulled me in.
Well, you've been a blessing to Journey Out as well. Tell them what it is you do at Journey Out. Stephanie's over at our South Central location. The reason why we have a South Central location that because with our diversion program and our empowerment groups, there was a need in South Central, since a lot of our clients were coming from South Central. About 48% of the clients that we serve are African American. So it just makes sense to me to have a location that was located for easy access for those that live in South Central. So the person who actually does the groups and actually runs our South Central location is Stephanie. So I asked her today if she could just kind of talk about what it is she does at our South Central location and what are some of the needs that she's seen over there as a result, especially since this virus has hit the African American community in such a broad and devastating way. So tell us what you do in our South Central office, and tell us what you're seeing as a result of the virus.
So what I do at the South LA office is a lot of the services we provide out here in Van Nuys, just on a different level. I do group facilitation, and a lot of that comes with crisis counseling and case management, connecting women to resources for education, training, employment services. I do some resume assistance and help women figure out, how do I convert these skills to something that, I can do, because it is something that they don't teach you, in a regular job readiness course. And so we do a lot of that. I do a lot of mentoring and client support. And what I'm seeing, especially since this COVID-19 outbreak has happened, is that even though there's a stay-at-home order, I think the first thing to acknowledge is that even though it applies to all of us, there's a lot of women that are still in a position where they have to be working every day. And I don't mean how me and you can come into the office or work from home. Like they're out on the blade, they're working, they're doing out calls, they're doing in calls. Those things are still necessary because one, that's still their source of income. And something else that I'm seeing is that we're getting a lot more requests for things that were still important, but we didn't have so much request for, like support with groceries, support with, one of the young ladies today that I was talking to in group was sharing with me that, she just needed some simple hygiene products, and those kinds of things. But housing is we also had a big outreach for housing because a lot of shelters aren't taking people in, and a lot of our women have children, and not just one little baby that's cute and fluffy. They got like school-age kids and mixed-age children, and it's been very difficult to find somewhere to place them. As women have gone through this COVID-19 situation, we've had a lot of women reach out that are trying to flee their pimps and need safety. They're trying to get out of domestic violence situations. I've been able to place a couple of women at Ruby's houses. I know that we use another organization that does share collaborative housing, and we reach out to them because they're still housing people. But a lot of times what we see the need for is the basics, the essentials, groceries, hygiene products, utility help. People need help with the next month's rent. Figuring out how they're going to get from one month to the next is going to be an impact.
So let's go back a little bit talking about the girls that might be running from their pimps and needing housing and needing shelter. It sounds to me when you talk about those things, you're also really talking about things that are overlapping, which is homelessness and domestic violence. Last week I talked a little bit about how those things really do intersect. So even though we might be dealing with human trafficking victims, what's embedded in there is homelessness and domestic violence. And you can have someone go to a domestic violence shelter or a homeless shelter, but am I right by saying that their needs are going to be maybe a little bit different because they are also human trafficking victims? Would you say that?
Absolutely, because if I'm somebody that is active in the life and I'm in a homeless shelter and I find myself in a financial situation, I'm going to be very prone to dipping into the pool that is now readily accessible to me. The same thing for domestic violence. A lot of women that are leaving pimp-driven situations, we are putting into domestic violence situations. And it's a challenge because a lot of women that have pimps or management or whatever they want to call it, don't identify as being domestically abused. They think that they're being punished and that it's been deserved. They didn't meet their quota, they talked back, or they looked at somebody who they weren't supposed to look at, or, like there's a whole set of rules that women are supposed to follow, and a lot of times the punishment for violation is abuse and violence.
And you're saying that these women are going like, I know what the rules are, so if I break the rules, I deserve to get hit, or I deserve to get beaten, or emotionally abused. And so having said that, then that means, because what it makes me think of is why there is a need for people to be able to understand a victim of human trafficking, because her needs and her way of thinking is not going to be the same as a domestic violence or a victim of domestic violence.
Absolutely. I mean, one would think that, a black eye is a black eye, but it's the mindset behind the way those things came about. It's the experiences and the lifestyles of those things and the mental settings that come from being in the life. When I'm engaged in the life, I'm very, what I think is independent is actually very codependent.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that a domestic violence shelter is going to require of me is going to feel almost impossible for me coming from a human trafficking background, because I'm still going to feel the need to provide for myself and do the basic things. And I don't have an income, I'm not, the housewife that is in an abusive relationship that has, this income that is coming in. I'm somebody that has had to be 10 toes down and had to get it. And so to go into a domestic violence shelter, the way that counselors and those people responsible interact with someone that comes from human trafficking is very different. And the organization that we're working with, trying to develop that kind of housing model, you have to look at the skill set is going to be different than just domestic violence counseling. This isn't just battered woman.
Bear wants to get into this too.
Yes, Bear has a lot to say. So it's going to take a lot of adjustments,
right,
as we're trying to figure out how to place women and what's the safest way to place women.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just moving human trafficking victims into a domestic violence shelter is going to cause conflict and difficulties in that housing situation, which is more than likely going to cause these women to be kicked out.
Right. Unless it's a domestic violence shelter that totally understands the human trafficking victim, and there are some that are out there that do that. But it even goes to how one might see someone who is in human trafficking, the stigma that comes with women that they see as prostituted women.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine. So when we talk about South Central, you're seeing some of the needs are things like groceries, needing a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
Now somebody may say, well, wait a minute, they got a stimulus check, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. No.
Can you tell us what are some of the barriers and why these women are not getting a stimulus check?
Yeah. So when you think about human trafficking, as a human trafficking victim, we're not filling out job applications or W-2 forms or I-9s, and most of us don't even have a bank account that is connected to our name or social security number. And so stimulus checks and other forms that the county have set up are not being issued to a lot of the women that we work for because they've operated like ghosts, most of their adult lives and are not traceable. There's someone who wouldn't qualify for those benefits because when you stop to think about someone like myself that, has developed a history of living what people deem as the normal world and going to work and paying taxes, that's great. But someone that is living pillow to post and staying from one motel to the next motel doesn't have a steady address, doesn't have a steady source of income, doesn't have a history of employment, doesn't have banking information. They're not being able to access a lot of these government funds, which is why we're seeing an increase in the need for grocery cards and hygiene supplies and those kinds of things because women still need the help. And while they're able to go back out into the life and into the streets, what we're trying to promote here is for them to be able to stay safe and to be able to help meet as many of those needs as we can.
To keep them from going back out on the
yes.
street. Yeah, no, absolutely. And someone might say, well, why would they be considered domestic violence victims? Because of the fact that, see, in the head of the victim, even though she's living with her pimp, but in her head it's her boyfriend, and in her head she considers it being in a relationship. So therefore she's living in a situation with someone that she's in a relationship with, and sometimes have kids by, and so that's what makes her domestic violence. One thing I wanted to talk about real quick before because time is moving, and I can talk to you all day.
Yeah.
Let's talk about du jour real quick.
Okay.
What is it that du jour does at Journey Out?
Du jour has been absolutely amazing at Journey Out. Du jour is someone that brings in the practice of mindful breathing and rhythmic stretching. And there are people that call that yoga. At South LA, we call it whatever we need to call it so that the women will acquiesce to it. There's not a lot of people in the South LA office that are showing up to do yoga. So, but what has been great about having Dejour's presence at the site is that women are becoming more open-minded to being able to take control of their feelings, because du jour is very good at letting them know that these are everyday skills that you can use and learn how to regulate your breathing when you're in a situation where you feel triggered or dangerous, And our women, if we're honest about it, are in daily situations where, they're in a car with somebody that's a complete stranger, and that can be triggering. They're in a hotel room, and you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of situations where these women are exposed to that. And so being given these mindful breathing techniques has been successful for some of the women. We've had women come back in and report to us that they're using these skills, and it's keeping them from putting themselves in harm's way, because when somebody says something to them off the wall or makes them feel triggered, instead of responding in the way that they normally would, they're remembering, I'm just going to breathe to 3 and then speak. And they're able to maintain more control of what could be a dangerous situation that way.
And I remember when we first started doing this, we did have a young lady that said that she was in a dangerous situation where she could have been physically harmed, but she took the time and used the skills that du jour taught her enough to be able to calm her down to figure out how to get away.
Yeah.
And so, and du jour considers it chair yoga, just so that you guys know.
Yes.
We had to reframe it, and the girls absolutely love us. So du jour, I just want to be able to tell you thank you. So do we have any questions that have popped up?
I am scrolling through. I see a couple of people that have said hi, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. We've got some hearts and some loves, and I don't see any questions on the board at the moment.
Okay, so we're going to flip sides.
Yes.
We're holding our breath. We're not spitting on each other or coughing.
And we're definitely 6 feet
and
apart.
We're 6 feet apart because, like I told you guys before, I'm La Brea Tar Pit old. So, I got to be careful and make sure that I don't get the Rona. I'm just saying. All right. So let's talk about exploitation. This is national information, but it's also information that is happening in LA as well. In talking to law enforcement, they have confirmed this information. So the information I'm going to talk to you about, some of it comes from direct sources in law enforcement. Some of it is coming from INCOSE, which is the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. And some of it is coming from PERF. And PERF stands for... Okay, hold on. I'm going to tell you in a minute. PERF stands for, I'll find it for you, and then I will tell you when I get to that particular segment. So this part that I'm going to talk to you about is some of these things are coming from INCOSE, National Center of Sexual Exploitation. They, as well as law enforcement, is saying that exploitation and human trafficking is moving from not only is it happening in the streets, but it's also happening online as well. Some cities are saying that since the Corona 19, that they're not seeing as much street activity in places like New York and in other cities. However, as I talked about last week, we are seeing it in Los Angeles, specifically on Figueroa. But however, it's starting to move online as well. So that's when we're talking about in-calls and out-calls. And in-calls and out-calls are like when someone is working online and people are coming to a particular location for service. What is also happening, because when we talk about human trafficking and we talk about the push factors, some of the push factors, as we said, are either someone forcing them in a pimp-driven type of situation or poverty. Exploiters or recruiters or pimps or traffickers, whatever you want to call it, they look for those gaps that are happening in a person's life. What are those vulnerabilities? And so one of those, again, when we talk about poverty, now we're talking about employment opportunities. If you go on the National Center on Sexual Exploitation and you look at their newsletter, amazingly enough, and I think I said this last week, where they did a press release for McDonald's employees saying, hey, I can tell you how to make $100,000 a year by doing webcamming or porno movies. Now, you know, 9 times out of 10, that's exploitation. They're not going to make that kind of money because when they show up, it's going to, not only is it going to be something else, but it's probably going to be sex acts that they probably would not normally, you know, do. That's the exploitation aspect of it. They are running ads on in terms of employment opportunities for porn. So you may say, okay, what does that have to do with me? Because I'm not going to be on a site where someone's going to hit me up with an employment opportunity in the porn world. Well, you might not be, but guess what? Your kids are on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on different social media sites where this is actually happening. So those are things that you need to be aware of. What they're also finding on a national level is that pimps are forcing their girls to go more into the porno industry or to do the webcams. So it's not just pimps forcing the girls and doing the webcam. They're also tapping into women that may have lost their job, that need money. And so what they tell them is it's totally safe. You could do it in your own home. Who else is going to know? Do the webcam and you're going to be able to make money. And so when you're vulnerable, you never know when this is going to happen. Also, one of the other things that they were saying was that there are some pimps that are actually making their girls go into legitimate work right now. Here's the thing. So now they put their girls in legitimate work. That money that they're making is still going to their pimp. So now what you're talking about is an intersection or transition from sex trafficking to labor trafficking, only temporarily, until this virus thing is over with. As a result, Incozy has done things like reaching out to like Instagram, reaching out to Uber, because those things, I'm sorry, not Instagram, Instacart, Uber, because those are considered legitimate jobs that you can make someone do and they would be able to make money. So Incozy's reaching out to those organizations saying, hey, this is what we're starting to see. So these are the things that you need to look out for. One of the things that she just, Stephanie just gave me a note, often locked into relationships because they, oh, okay. So she's saying that sometimes what happens is that people are locked into these relationships because they owe their pimps money for service. So basically, are you saying like he's giving her a place to live? Is that?
He's giving her a place to live. He's setting up the websites. He's posting the ads. He's taking her to and fro. So then something that I thought was a mutual exchange becomes something that I now owe you all of this money for. And so I'm locked into this relationship and unable to leave.
So, okay, so locked in and unable to leave. As it pertains to kids as well, isolation in and of itself is a risk factor. So you have kids that know that they can't go play dates, they can't go out, and especially teenagers, they can't go hang out at the mall. Especially if you're in Los Angeles, you can't go and hang out. So they need some form of to be able to socialize. And so what do? They go online. And so by them being online as a way to socialize, that opens up in terms of a risk factor where predators are able to get to them, talk to them, be able to fill whatever gaps that child might feel that they need. One thing, even though we're dealing with COVID-19, just know that the demand is still there. So when we talk about sexual activity, the demand is still there. They're seeing an uptick on porn sites. They're also seeing an uptick in terms of webcamming. So supply and demand. Kids are being recruited again online. And so the problem is when you talk about the webcam situation and when it comes to these kids, they might make friends with someone that they don't know, and they could say, okay, well, I just want you, all you have to do is just do this. Just show me this. Just show me what you look like in a bathing suit. And then they may say it goes from that to something else. Nobody's going to know. Then once they do that, there are situations where they actually now will tell them, okay, I got these pictures of you. I'm going to put them up if you don't keep doing this, or I'm going to tell your parents if you don't keep doing this. So those are ways that they are trapping these kids online. So parents, I would say to you, please, 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 your computer probably should be more in an open space, like in the den or family room or living room, as opposed to the kid is locked up in their room with the computer. Also, there's parental settings that are on there. Like I said before, in Cozy is asking TikTok, Zoom, and Google to tighten up a little bit more on their settings to be able to keep kids safe. And so you may say, well, why Zoom? Well, because some of these exploiters are using Zoom for the webcam. And so that's the reason why I say Zoom. So if you go to, and we're going to put Incozy's information up on our website, and it's the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. It's Incozy, NCOSE.com. It is a great website. It just not only shows you what they're doing in terms of the bigger corporate organizations that are out there in order to help in human trafficking. On the last note, I told you that I was going to give you information as it pertains to COVID-19 and crime. What they have found nationwide is that crime is actually going down because most people are staying home. Here's the interesting thing, and I think I talked about this last week, domestic violence. Although they are not getting a lot of reports on domestic violence, that does not mean that it is not happening. It is happening. If you have to stay at home with your abuser, it's going to make it very hard for you to be able to make a report. But we are getting the information out there that even though I know with LAPD, some of their front desks show closed, but that doesn't mean that you cannot make a police report because you still can. So we're encouraging people to do that. One of the things that has also gone up nationwide, where they're seeing a trend, is motor vehicle theft from motor vehicle. And that could be because people are home, so their cars are there. So there's more cars that are out there. So places like Vancouver, Washington, they saw 19 additional motor vehicle thefts per 100,000 in Texas, 12 additional motor vehicle, this is just in the week, per 100,000 people. So those are the things that are going up. They said the arrest activity has declined as well. So crime has gone down. However, even though statistically it shows that it's down, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. People may just not be reporting because they may feel that they cannot report. So are there any questions? Do you guys have any questions of us? Oh, and Angelica says she misses you too, Dee. So if there are no questions, please look at our website to see what activities that we're having. I want to thank Stephanie again for sharing her story, because that's not always easy. One thing I just wanted to say, and I almost forgot, when we're talking about the online, unfortunately, one of the other things that they're seeing, you know, Stephanie talked about that it was her grandfather that introduced her to the idea of prostitution. There are some parents who are taking pictures of their kids and are exploiting them and selling them online. If you look at the national statistic, about 16% as it pertains to human trafficking is familial human trafficking. So just because it's a grandfather or a father or a mother, it's still pimping, it's still human trafficking, it's still a felony. It's just familial. Unfortunately, it's the family. And as they were also talking about, as it pertains to child abuse, you know, when kids are going to school, that's an easy way for them to report child abuse. Now, those kids, just like the domestic violence victim, kids that are victims of abuse are now locked in with their abusers as well. So we really need to keep an eye out on each other. Law enforcement is aware of it, organizations are aware of it, and they're trying to figure out ways in order for women and boys and men to be able to report if they're a victim of domestic violence, child abuse, or human trafficking. So since we don't have any questions, we're going to end. Just remember, we will be back Facebook Live, 4 o'clock next Wednesday. We're going to be doing this for the month of May. And probably by then, I really will be able to put my hair in a ponytail at the top, because it's all grown out. So God only knows what it's going to look like. Not only by next week, but what is it going to look like by the end of May, or when we're finished with this whole stay-at-home thing. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you learned some things. If you have any ideas of what we could talk about next week, please let me know. Have a good day. Stay healthy. You want to say goodbye?
Stay safe and stay home. Bye, guys.
Thank you guys so much. If you would like to donate to us, that's never a problem. You can go to our website, www.journeyout.org. Thank you again. Bye-bye.